unconscious, as you know, Freud says, can't be brought into consciousness in either senses of the word. These dynamically unconscious things are positively withheld from consciousness. This is a different type of meaning of the word unconscious. And now, before I come to that, which is very important, I just want to remind you that even this descriptively unconscious part, Freud again drew a distinction between two aspects of that, of the descriptively unconscious. He's saying one part can be brought to consciousness, another bit can't be brought to consciousness, not because it's repressed. This he calls the unconscious ego. And for example, the mechanisms of defense are ego processes that we're not aware of ourselves doing. And they're not the repressed, they're the holding of the repressed back. And in fact, we now know a great many what we will call procedural learning. Much of what we do, which is adaptive, which is in the service of the reality principle, which is an ego function, is not capable of consciousness, and I'll tell you why. It's because it is no longer representational. It has been reduced to associative learning. This happens, I do that. I have no conception of why I'm doing it. That's because you've gone from episodic through semantic down to procedural. So there's many grades of consciousness. And it's, in psychoanalysis today, I think we really need to be more precise about what we're talking about when we're talking about consciousness. And I hope I've given you some sense of how many different types of consciousness and of unconscious cognition there are. But now I want to speak about the repressed. Where am I? How many types of unconscious are there? I've told you how the cognitive unconscious is derived, how it comes into being. I've told you that it's a matter of once you solve the problem, then you automatize it. I should have made clear that that's not today I'm conscious of it, tomorrow I've automatized it. It's a continuous process, and that process we call consolidation. So that things which you've just learned remain in episodic memory, they remain pre-conscious, and you bring them back to consciousness again. Why? Because you've just learned them. They are not stable structures yet. You're not yet entirely sure that things work exactly like that. But that worked like that once, so you hold that episode in mind. Then it works like that again, and again, and again. So you don't need an episodic memory anymore. Now it becomes a rule. Now it's a semantic memory. And then it works again and again, and the semantic rule always applies until eventually you don't even need to know the rule. You just do it automatically. This is this process of consolidation. It's a slow process for the most part. The process of consolidation. It happens over months and years, over a lifetime. But the whole trend is to go toward automatization, toward subcorticalization, toward non-representational associative learning. And you know why? It's because that becomes more and more and more secure, more and more deeply successful prediction. And you know, as I told you, what this is all in the service of. Now, how does the repressed differ from this process? What I'm going to tell you now is an hypothesis. This is my own view. And remember, the important thing about NeuroPsychoAnalysis is because we're talking about neurological processes, which can be easily tested, because they're observable and manipulable and measurable variables. We're not just using a metaphorical language. We're saying, if this is the mechanism, then this is how it should work neuroanatomically in terms of the regional functional neuroanatomy, and then we should be able to test it. We should say, if that's correct, then here's a prediction, then let's see if it's right or not. So this is the difference between neuropsychoanalysis and other schools of psychoanalysis. This is not a school, it's not a new language, it's not a metaphorical language. It's a translation of this side into that side so that we can do experiments on it. That's a crucial point. So now I'm going to make an hypothesis, and as I say, it's only worth its salt if we generate testable predictions and actually do the experiments to confirm them. At this point in time, it's merely an hypothesis. My view is that the repressed is the same as the cognitive unconscious. It's the same in the sense that it's something that once was an episodic memory, it's something that once was in working memory, that was consciously thought about, represented in that way, that it was a problem that you needed to feel your way through, but that it differs from the other things that are rendered unconscious in this crucial respect, that the repressed is rendered unconscious, that is to say it is automatized before a solution has been found. That is to say it is illegitimately or prematurely automatized. That's what I think the repressed is. Why should we do that? Why should we prematurely or illegitimately automatize non-solutions to problems? The reason is because there are many problems which cannot be solved, especially when you're little. There are many problems that you face that you simply cannot solve because you do not have the wherewithal to solve them. You do not have the physical or the cognitive wherewithal to solve them. So you face two choices. Either you carry on consciously mulling over this problem infinitely, using up the little bit of consciousness that you've got. Remember what a limited resource it is. Absolutely pointlessly, because it's a problem you can't solve. And I gave the example over the weekend of the famous Oedipus complex. The little Mark Solms is 4 years old, and he has this desire. He wants to be big like his daddy. Now he's got a problem. How's he going to become big like his daddy? Well, he can't become big like his daddy. He's got to wait 50 years. Okay, so no point in thinking, how am I going to achieve this? Not only does he want to be big like his daddy, he wants to drive a car like his daddy, he wants to have a job like his daddy, he wants to boss people around like his daddy, he wants to be married like his daddy, he wants to be married to his mummy like his daddy, he wants to make babies like mummy and daddy do. It's wonderful to be like that. Who wouldn't want to be like that? Rather than this little guy who's passively told what to do, things happen to him all the time. He wants to be big, like them. He wants to have the things they have. This is where the action is. I want to be top dog like that. How do you achieve it? You can't. You can't make daddy go away. You can't make mummy take you seriously. You can't make babies with mummy. You just don't have the resources. So what do you do with problems like that? As I said, they're insoluble. So what you do is you say, I can't find a solution to this. This is what I want. This is how I think I can do it, but it doesn't even really work. And even though it doesn't work, I'm going to stop thinking about it. Because it doesn't work, because I can't make it work, I'm going to stop thinking about it consciously. Why? So that I can open up the resource of consciousness to solve the problems that I can solve. Learning how to do sums and how to tie my shoelaces and how to make a tie, and how to get the little girls to like me, which is hard enough. Okay, so that's how I believe it works. We then render these things unconscious. In other words, we make predictions about what to do in this situation, which we then will repeat automatically, just as the ordinary, legitimately automatized solutions are repeated automatically, timelessly, forever. The same applies to these, except they're not subject to revision. You can't bring these things back into consciousness. You have willfully, you have motivatedly excluded this. You're saying, this causes me too much unpleasure. I can't solve this thing. I'm wasting my cognitive consciousness on this problem. I'm going to automatize my non-solution. That happens, as I said, mainly in childhood. It happens also mainly with insoluble problems, and that is why so much of what constitutes the repressed is childhood situations and conflictual situations. Conflicts is just another word for unsolved problems or insoluble problems. So the unconscious is constituted of insoluble problems that you have bad solutions to, and you keep on repeating those bad solutions. That's what makes them different from the cognitive unconscious. The repressed is the same place, it's the same type of thing, and ultimately it's rendered associative. So it's absolutely thoughtless and mindless and unthinkable. You don't even know that you ever learned that thing. You can't even know that you learned that thing. But you do it, and you do it repetitively, and you do it compulsively, just like an instinct. It's an absolutely stereotyped thing, except it doesn't work. It constantly bangs into reality. What is the consequence of that? And this is absolutely crucial, is that unlike the cognitive unconscious, the repressed unconscious does not do away with the affects. So only if you've actually solved the problem, they're represented by the affect, will the automatization of the cognition coincide with the legitimate disappearance of the affected state that set the thing in motion in the first place. With the repressed, the affects remain because the problem hasn't been solved. So you keep banging into reality, the affect doesn't, the prediction doesn't work, and so the affect remains. And this we call the threat of the return of the repressed. That's why Freud says that the repressed doesn't want to remain in itself, it doesn't want to remain repressed. You have to have defenses that keep it repressed. And that, what is it that makes it keep on wanting to come back to consciousness? It's the fact that it's generating affects. That's what affects mean. Affects mean, yeah, there's a problem, mate. This doesn't work. I've got a need here that's not being met. But because of repression, there's nothing you can do about it. And so this is why I say our patients suffer mainly from feelings. Freud says our patients suffer from reminiscences. He means they suffer from memories of which they're not conscious, cognitions of which they're not conscious, predictions of which they're not conscious. This is what I do in that situation, even though it doesn't work, gives rise to feelings. So from the patient's point of view, this is the problem. They don't know why. Okay? I think that's a very important basic conceptualization which integrates these so-called two different unconsciouses. There's only one mechanism whereby things become unconscious. But the question is whether it's been legitimately or illegitimately achieved, and how you tell the difference is whether or not it manages the affects. Okay.